Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining me today on Newsmakers. Well, the summer travel season may be ending, but travel is a year-round concern, especially for the Missouri State Highway Patrol. And joining me today is Sergeant John Lueckenhoff. Thank you for being here today.
How are you?
Doing well. I know everybody thinks summer is the busy time of year. Are we still looking at travel in terms of seasons, or is it, busy year-round now?
Well, our big summer travel's over, basically. We had our Memorial Weekend travel, 4th of July travel, then Labor Day travel. Our next big one that we expect a lot of people will be Thanksgiving. Right. But as far as the lake traffic's really slowed down. The travel in to experience everything that Missouri has to offer has really slowed down now that school's back in session.
So with the Highway Patrol, of course, you're responsible for the state highways, and people around here might think, well, that's Interstate 44. But there are a lot of state roads rather than Highway 44.
Oh, absolutely. You go from the interstates all the way down to our small little lettered routes. Those are they're all state highways. We operate on all of those. We go out, we do enforcement actions on all those highways. We investigate traffic crashes, investigate crime. You might even see troopers on city streets from time to time, just because simply, obviously as a trooper is passing through a community, if there's some sort of action that needs to be taken, they're certainly going to do that.
Right, they're serving no matter where the city line is at.
There are no real lines except for the state boundaries. So.
Of course, there are some lines as far as districts around the state. So explain, when you're from this region, the Joplin, Carthage region.
So this is what we call Troop D. It's the southwest corner of the state. We cover 18 counties within the state. And then troopers themselves, they would be assigned to what we call zones. And typically a zone encompasses 1 or 2 counties, depending on the manpower, depending on the type of area that it is. So although that trooper, they can certainly go outside of that zone, but on a day-to-day basis, those individual troopers, they're responsible for investigating traffic crashes, working traffic, etc., in that assigned area.
So they really get to know the area and the people they're working with.
Oh, certainly. They develop the relationships with the county officers, the city officers within their jurisdiction, but really in the small rural counties, like where I worked for 20 years. I worked in Berry County, raised my kids in Cassville, and many times you kind of become that community's trooper. You'll talk to people from that community, and they'll always want to know, hey, do you know Trooper so-and-so? He's my neighbor, or I go to church with him, or our kids grew up together, or whatever. If you think about it, a trooper, yes, we're a police officer, we're a state police officer in the area, but we're also a resident of that community. We also have kids in school. We shop at the same grocery store. We go to the same churches. So we're members of that community with a very specific job.
Right. And of course, you mentioned the different aspects of what you're involved with, and I know you also work on like we're doing right now, the public relations, community relations side for the patrol.
Right. Back in June of 2015, I was given the opportunity to become a public information officer. And so my primary day-to-day job is to go to businesses, schools, civic organizations, and do safety presentations, as well as I'm responsible for media relations when it comes to highway patrol, whether it's an event, maybe an investigation, whatever the case may be. I write news releases, I do press conferences, and as you mentioned, I'm fortunate enough to get to come on air with you, go on air with radio stations and do programs like this.
So it's a way to educate, to reach out to the community through the media outlets as well.
A lot of people, they think about these big operations that we do where we put a lot of extra troopers out on the road because of a holiday weekend, and there's some confusion sometimes in which many times they think, oh, well, that's just a whole lot more police officers out there stopping cars, writing tickets, doing that sort of thing. Actually, what that is that's a whole lot more police officers out there for a visual presence, which helps slow people down, helps keep people more paying more attention. But also, if you're that person that has trouble on the side of the road, maybe you have a flat tire and you don't have the right equipment, maybe your car's just broken down and your cell phone's dead and you need some help. Those troopers are also there to do those types of services.
It's a lot of services, and a lot of times people, when they travel, they don't think about that until that happens. My tire's flat. What do I do now?
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times, and I think you could probably talk to any trooper, how many times you roll up behind a car and there's just that sense of relief because maybe they don't know how to change a tire, maybe they found out that their spare was flat too, and oh no, what do I do now? Where's the closest wrecker? Which tow company is going to treat me fairly? Which tow company is not going to treat me fairly? All those types of things that when that police officer or that trooper rolls up behind them, they kind of get that sense of relief.
Okay, I'm on good hands now. Tying it together. Well, I know that we hear a lot of different campaigns and highway safety and so forth. And what would you say is the main concern you see being on the highways, watching the interstate traffic? Some of the main challenges we're facing with drivers today.
Well, the number one cause of all traffic crashes in our state, unfortunately, is inattention. I think people, they get a little confused from time to time. They think texting and driving, and that certainly is an issue. The cell phone is certainly an issue, and it's probably the most predominant issue. But sometimes what people don't realize is that you just went through the drive-through and you've got your soda and your cheeseburger or whatever, and you're looking down and you're digging in the bag and you're trying to get things prepared as you're going down the road. That's no different than if you're looking down at your cell phone.
Your eyes are off the road.
Absolutely. Or you turn around to deal with a small child in the back seat while you're traveling down the road. It's anything that takes your eyes, takes your attention off the job of driving the car. So whether it's a cell phone, whether it's your passengers, whether it's the food in your car, whatever the case may be. But we know that inattention is causing more crashes than anything, and as technology continues to progress, you've got to ask yourself the question at some point, do we need to figure out a way that that maybe those phones don't operate? Maybe we need some legislation that would help curb that desire to constantly be connected.
Right. You see people talking all the time when you're driving down the highway. And are they watching?
Yeah.
What as far as Missouri's laws regarding the use of cell phones? I know some places they say you're not supposed to hold the phone. It has to be through that type of situation.
So we have a texting ban, and the texting ban is anyone under the age of 22 cannot text while they're traveling down the roadway. Unfortunately, that means that it's not illegal for anyone above that age to
drive and try to text.
But it's a simple texting law. It's not a no hands law.
Okay.
So if you're dialing the phone or if you're loading an address into your GPS or something like that, were you texting? Well, no, not technically. You weren't texting. So it's a very difficult law to enforce. And I know year after year that will be looked at, and that there's going to be some work towards making it just a totally hands-free. The phone can be in the car, but you can't manipulate it in any way. Now, for our commercial vehicle operators in the state, we do have that in place. They have to have a Bluetooth device. They are allowed to single touch the phone to answer a call. They can talk through a Bluetooth, hands-free. They can't dial and make calls. They can't use apps. They can't input data or anything like that. If they're on their phone in any form or fashion, it has to be through that Bluetooth device.
And of course, Bluetooth is more common in many more cars nowadays too. So hopefully people are using those in their vehicles.
And I'm quite certain that more and more of our new, even commercial vehicles, I'm sure that's probably part of the systems within that vehicle.
Now, when you speak of commercial vehicles, we're thinking of the big tractor trailers, the trucks on the interstate.
Tractor trailers, dump trucks, anything that would fall under the criteria of you having a commercial driver's license to operate it. So it could even be, a big 1-ton dually pickup truck with a really large trailer. If that meets the load carrying capabilities of needing a commercial driver's license, then they would still fall under that Bluetooth hands-free law.
So when you look at interstates, for instance, you have a lot of mix of vehicles and types, a lot of obviously the large trucks traveling as well as the private vehicles and the cars. And and sometimes people who are driving the cars see the trucks kind of as a nuisance, they're in the way, but I'm sure the trucks also see the cars as they're not following the rules either.
And it would really be nice if everyone that drives our interstate system in a passenger car could at least get to experience riding in one of those big trucks and seeing how motorists operate around them, seeing and I think mostly it's just an education thing. I think a lot of people don't realize that, hey, if I hang out in this certain area by this truck, that driver can't see me.
You see those signs about blind spots.
Right, what they call the no zone, that area that the mirrors don't cover and they can't physically see, as well as people not necessarily understanding that, sure, in my car I can hit the brakes and I can stop really quick, but that truck that's right behind me can't. And so I moved over in front of that truck and then I hit the brakes, and bad things can happen. Right. So I would really like it if there was a, if I could wave my magic wand and people would really give those truck drivers some more space, give them, understanding that, they're transporting our needs across this country, and they're out there for a reason. We need them out there, and we certainly don't want to see anybody get hurt just because they don't really understand how things work.
And you see the signs that say "share the road."
Share the road, and share the road with everyone, whether it's with tractor trailers, other vehicles. The whole, the road rage thing, and the by golly, I've got to get there first, and I'm going to beat that person to the next exit or whatever. It leads to tragedy, unfortunately.
We also see emphasis, especially in the summertime. I've noticed signs sharing with motorcycles. That aspect of driving that the motorcycles sometimes, I guess, aren't seen even by vehicles. Because
of the nature of the way that vehicle is designed, because it's so small, people miss them because of size. But a lot of times, what happens is people they misjudge the speed of it because of its size. That smaller object, they don't recognize that, hey, that motorcycle is actually traveling at highway speed, and they misjudge the speed of that motorcycle. So, check your mirrors when you're changing lanes, check your blind spots, because you may not be able to see that motorcycle. And certainly, if there's one coming, give it a second look and make sure is that gap where I'm going to pull out or go across the road, is that really big enough, or should I wait just a couple seconds and let that motorcycle go on by?
Now, talking about motorcycles, people might be curious as far as the motorcycle laws in the state, as far as helmets, because there's probably some confusion. We hear about things, what do we do in Missouri?
And I think a lot of that confusion came up throughout the session. It really looked like the helmet law for Missouri was going to be repealed, and ultimately that was vetoed by the governor. So our helmet law remained in place as it was. All motorcycle riders, all motorcycle passengers, all motor tricycle riders and passengers, you have to wear a helmet anytime you're operating that vehicle on our roadways.
And what about the smaller scooters? People might be curious, well, I see these little scooters going around town. They're not wearing helmets. There's a size limitation.
Yeah, so if it's below 50 cc's, so 49 cc's and below, which is the size of the engine, and it is not capable of exceeding 30 miles per hour, then that falls under the scooter law. Okay. And it's not required to be registered. They don't have to wear a helmet. You'll notice they don't have license plates on them. They don't have to have specialty insurance for those. Now, of course, we always recommend that no matter what you're operating out there, protect yourself. You need to have some insurance on there. But the scooter law, it's handled completely different than a motorcycle. Now, that being said, that person that goes out and buys what they think is a scooter, and then they get checked going down the street at 35 miles per hour, now they are instantly a motorcycle. They're no longer
They're going
a scooter.
too fast for that scooter limit.
That's right. The scooter limit was 30, so they get checked at 35. Now they have to have a motorcycle license. Now they have to have a helmet. Now they have to have a license plate, insurance, and everything just like if it was a motorcycle.
Really? Well, automobile safety and vehicle safety, we always hear a lot about seat belts. I know you see signs as you drive across the interstate, so many fatalities, so many were not wearing their seat belt.
So, it seems like year after year, that's about 60% of the people that lose their lives in our state are not buckled. And so, if you want to just use easy numbers, we haven't been up to 1,000 for a few years. But if we had a year of 1,000 again, and 600 of those were not wearing their seatbelts, what our studies show is that about half of fatal traffic crashes in which the occupant was unbelted, about half of those are survivable if they are belted. So if you think that now all of a sudden we went from 1,000 to 700 just because we saved 300 lives just by everyone buckling up. Again, legislation is worked on year after year on making that more of a primary offense and increasing the fines. It doesn't seem to get traction for whatever reason, but we know that seatbelts save lives. I mean, that's a given. I mean, that's been proven time after time after time, and so we really encourage people to wear them.
Keep encouraging that. And you say wear seatbelts as everyone in the car, not just the driver of the
Absolutely. We want to see everybody, every car, pickup truck, SUV, tractor trailer, dump truck, we want to see everyone in our state buckled up at all times, no matter what seat position you're in. We want those babies in the proper car seats or booster seats. We want everyone protected as best they can. It's the #1 life-saving device in the vehicle. Airbags, a lot of people, they talk about airbags, and well, my car has airbags. Well, an airbag loses 40% of its efficiency if you're not buckled up. That airbag is not designed to stop you unrestrained. That airbag is designed to aid the seatbelt restraint
holds you
system.
back, the airbag comes out to me.
That's right. That's why, you know, a lot of the old cars, if you look, when they first came out, you saw on the dash it said SRS, supplemental restraint system. Supplemental means I'm helping something else. I'm not a standalone entity.
So you mentioned these car seats for children. Let's talk a little bit about that for our viewers. You know that you
Sure.
mentioned booster seats and the different ages. You know, what some people might say, well, what age do my children, do they grow up to other seats? Or,
So let's just start with the little babies. Obviously, the infant needs to be in a rear-facing infant carrier, an infant car seat. The safest place in any vehicle is the center of the vehicle, as close to the middle of the vehicle. So we always encourage parents, if it's an SUV, maybe to be in the middle of that second row if there's a seat there, or the middle of the back seat if it's a passenger car. For years and years and years, we said keep them rear-facing for a year. Now we're saying keep them rear-facing for 2 years. Now that's not a statutory requirement.
Right.
There's not a law that makes you do that, but the longer you can keep your child rear-facing, the safer. And the reason why is because our primary crashes, the majority of crashes, involve a frontal impact.
So that child in the back seat.
Having that child in the back seat facing backwards, they have that whole seat back cushioning that blow and supporting them. So whether they're rear-facing or when they get turned around, they're forward-facing. You know, now you've got that 2.5-year-old, and okay, I don't think they're comfortable or whatever. You know, there's all sorts of reasons.
Right,
why
everybody
people
has
say,
excuses.
Oh, it's time to turn them around. So, you know, once that child is turned around, they need to stay in that car seat until they're 4 years old and exceeding 40 pounds. So if they're over 4 years old but they're still below 40 pounds, they still need to stay in that full car seat. Once they reach that age of 4 and 40 pounds, and so I don't want anybody to be confused, if you have a 40-pound 3-year-old, they still have to stay in the seat.
They haven't reached that 4 age, right?
4 and 40.
Okay.
So then you can move them into what we call a booster seat, and once they go into that booster seat, that can be a lot of different varieties, from just the little small one that just sits on the seat, all the way up to what we call a high back booster. And what that does is that raises the child up, so it repositions the actual car seat belts across them, so it's not up on their neck or face. Positions that properly. Now, the really neat thing about like a high back booster is that if you've got that child that is growing up and you want to keep them as safe as possible, a lot of those high back boosters still have a harness in them as well. So you could still harness them like a car seat, but in a much larger seat.
Okay.
So that full harness,
Goes over
both
the shoulders
and across the waist, that's of course the safest. You know, why are race car drivers, why do they have all that?
They don't have just a strap going. Yeah.
That's right, that's the safest way to buckle them in. And then once your child reaches either 8 years old, 4'9", or 80 pounds. If they reach any of those 3 criteria, now they can go to the regular seat belt. They can get rid of the whole booster and put them in the regular seat. You know, another common question about that I get asked all the time is, when can I put my child in the front seat?
Right.
Well, there's not a statutory requirement on that says, hey, your child has to be a certain age. But what we recommend to people is that set your child in the front seat, and if their upper leg is long enough that their knee bends over the front of the seat without slouching, if their hips are against the seat back like they should be, if their knee is long enough to bend over the front of the seat and their lower legs hang straight down, they're big enough to be in the front seat. We never want that knee behind the front of the seat with their legs sticking out, because unfortunately when that airbag deploys, it can be very detrimental to those lower legs.
It's coming right at that angle.
And it's coming down, and as it comes down and it hits that leg that's sticking straight out, it can cause some pretty serious leg injuries. And so we want those legs to be hanging down and that seat slid back as far as possible away from that airbag.
Great. So a lot of things for parents to keep in mind on that, you know,
Sure.
the children to say. And I know pickup trucks might be a thought as well. The law about riding in the back of a pickup truck. You know, sometimes you may drive through town and say, people sit in the back of that truck. truck.
You know, we don't want anybody in the back of a pickup truck, but there is a little caveat in the law that says if that's the only vehicle you own and the children are above the age of 16, then people can be in the back of there. Again, we would rather that not be, but if that's the only vehicle you own, you know, what do you do? And that's why the exception that it's not illegal to ride in the back of a pickup truck unless it's small children.
And tying that together. Well, around this area, I know right now in the fall, people traveling up Interstate 44 are seeing some work zones, and that's something that I want to also have you discuss for the viewers, because you know, you're going down the road at 70, and then there's a sign that says 2 miles ahead, road construction. You know, what are some of the things that you see patrolling the highways that, you know, people need to work on to help make those areas safer?
Well, you know, the utmost important thing is the safety of those workers and the safety of our motorists, which is obviously why they're out there doing that construction. They're improving those bridges, they're improving those roadways to make it safer for everyone. So we certainly never want to have tragedy while those improvements are being made. You know, for years and years, and I still remember when I was growing up that I'd be riding with my folks or riding with someone else, and you'd see that sign because you were paying attention that said right lane closed ahead, and that sign may be 2 miles before the construction zone. So everyone started moving over. Everyone started moving over, and then you had that one motorist that stayed in that right lane, and they pass everybody, and then they want to cut in at the very last minute, and you hear the people in your car getting frustrated and upset. My golly, why is that person? Why didn't they move over when the sign was just like we did? Well, in all actuality, we don't want people to move over when they first see the sign. We want people to start slowing down, start paying attention, and we want them to stay in their lanes. If you're in the right lane, stay there. If you're even if your lane is going to be closed, stay in your lane until you approach what we call the merge point. And you'll see signs at that point that'll say merge now, or just the arrow and the flashing light, merge, merge. So we want people to stay in their lanes, and then when they get to that point, we want them to merge in what we call a zipper fashion.
Right, I've seen that sign.
We want alternating lanes, each basically this lane, you're already in your lane, say the right lane's closed.
Right.
So we want a right lane car to go in between every other car that's already in the left lane.
Kind of a common take turns.
That's right, take turns, merge in like a zipper. What that does, and the reason why we want that done, is if everyone moves over way back there at the sign, now we have this long stack of cars, which is what we call the queue. That long stack of cars can be very, very dangerous, because now you've got all the cars already in that lane, and they're slowing down so much that when, say, two vehicles, especially if it's a larger vehicle followed by a smaller vehicle, they come up and they approach that nearly stopped line of traffic because everyone has moved over, that person realizes that, oh my gosh, I can't stop in time. They move over to the other lane because it's empty. There's no one there. This second car never saw that coming, and they run into the back. And unfortunately, we've lost lives because of that exact incident. So we just ask people to, you know, be courteous, look out for each other. Don't be so selfish that one car in front of you is really going to cause you that much problem. Stay in your lane till you get to the merge point. Flow in like a zipper, and it keeps traffic moving at a better pace and reduces that big stack up or that queue.
Are you finding more people paying attention to like apps? I know that MoDOT has an app that shows you traffic conditions. You know, they're traveling across the state, so they'll know where the work zones are.
You know, it's really interesting. I didn't realize that until just the other day, our work zones and the stack up of traffic, somehow that feeds right into a lot of these mapping systems. And you can look in real time and you can see that, hey, this area is red, this area is yellow, or this area is green. And what that's telling you in real time is, you know, green is it's flowing at the pace that MoDOT expected it to be. Right. Yellow, it's slowed down, and red, it's bad. It's nearly a standstill. Or
it's going to take you a while to get through there.
It's going to take you a long ways. And so, you know, I believe a lot of people are starting to, whether they look at the MoDOT website or the mapping systems in the cars, if they're getting that data, and I think people legitimately even choose different routes. I know that even you know, me personally, if I'm going somewhere and I know that there's a route that there's not construction, that's the route I take.
You know the alternative way to get around it.
I try to stay out of those, and so that actually helps those construction zones. That helps the fewer cars going through the construction zone, the better. better. But because, you know, we talked at the very beginning of this about all the holiday travel and the holiday, that's why they don't work during those times, because we know we're going to have congestion and the likelihood of accidents or crashes goes up, and so we don't want to put anybody at risk during those times.
But you still may have the lane reductions because they've started working on a bridge.
That's
or
right.
something
Yeah.
like you need to follow.
If the bridge top is off,
You're not going to
even
go
though
across
there's
it.
no one there, we're still not driving across it. Absolutely.
And one other item, I know that you see the signs that, you know, pull over or go into the other lane when there's an emergency vehicle stopped on the shoulder. When you're stopping someone or there's a tow truck picking up someone, you need to have people get out of that driver's side lane.
That's right. So Missouri law, for whether it's emergency vehicles, so that's police, fire, ambulance, and tow trucks, or construction vehicles, Missouri law says that first you must slow down, and second, that if that other lane is available, you must move over. Now, you know, I recognize that, well, there are times that I'm on a 2-lane road, so there is no other lane, which is why we say you must slow down and proceed with the utmost caution. But if you're on that interstate system or one of our U.S. highways that's a divided highway and you've got that lane, please move over. Please give us that room. It's, you know, all too often, too many times, police officers, emergency workers, tow truck operators have been struck, and that lane was wide open, and it goes all the way back to that inattention thing. Why would anyone run into a vehicle with these bright flashing lights on it that you know is stopped on the side of the road? Well, because you didn't see it. I tell people all the time, when I would investigate a crash, and it was at an intersection, and someone drove out in front of an oncoming vehicle, and then that person said to me, I never saw them.
So
you know what? I believe them every single time, because no person would intentionally, unless they were wanting to hurt themselves, no person would intentionally pull out in front of an oncoming car. They just wouldn't do it. But you have to ask yourself the question, why didn't you see it? Why didn't you see that tow truck or that emergency worker on the side of the road? Why didn't you see that car before you pulled? What was going on inside of your vehicle that prevented you from seeing that? So we need people to slow down. We need people to give us the room to do the job that we're doing. You know, that may be your loved one that we're there helping, and that's what we're there for.
Great. Well, I think there's a lot of points that you're making. I know you have a website that provides additional information, and other people can branch out to all the other things that the patrol does.
Certainly, we would love people to take a look at our website. We're on Twitter now. We're on Facebook now. We try to, you know, if there's a major incident, say on the interstate, and I get that information, I try to put that out on Twitter. So if people are, that's another place where you can.
Here's what's happening.
Yeah, that's another place where you can go to and say, oh, well, the Highway Patrol just posted that the eastbound lanes of I-44 are completely blocked at such and such a location. Take an earlier exit to try to get around that, or whatever the case may be. But we would, you know, as many people would flood our website, flood our Twitter and Facebook page, we would absolutely love it, because we've got a lot of good information on there.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming in today and sharing some information with our audience.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week for Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on the station. We'll see you then.